We now have this clear recognition that a lot of the big development challenges that we face today are all about politics and power, challenging the status quo or vested interests. So we have that recognition, but at the same time, the way we engage with those political and power processes, the way we engage with accountability and democracy processes needs to change. Too often, approaches are too technocratic, too siloed, working with one set of actors rather than across the system, and often come in with a very fixed, sort of linear sense of a reform process that will happen over a 5, multiple year period, when actually we know that things are much more complex than that.
There has to be trust from the people vis-à-vis institutions. If the institutions and the responsible people in the institutions don't provide the answers that they pose to us, then we will have a negative narrative having a much greater chance to spread around the world. Our job is now to mobilize so that we can have a positive narrative.
Statistics are really worrying. In EU, 31% of people trust parliaments, less than 15% of people trust political parties. In some countries, it's less than 6% of people trusting political parties. Parliaments and political parties are perceived throughout OSCE region as the most corrupt democratic institutions. We cannot address the issue of accountability if we do not address the issue of trusting those democratic institutions. To address this issue, we need to focus on the way they're financed, we need to look at the issue they deliver, on the key promises they're making to citizens, and this is the biggest challenge to democracy in the 21st century.
It's about the tools that we use for empowerment, and much of that can be achieved through putting in place, again, structured systems of consultation, involvement, making sure that there is more data available for citizens themselves to use about decision making, etc., etc.
Strong journalism is absolutely key in this context. Journalism that does investigate, journalism that does really trying to report on the real reality of what's going on the ground. I think those journalists who are taking risks in the public interest are under greater threat, so they need more support.
I will like to stress the remark that there is not a key actor. All of them are key actors. We have to take into account politicians, we have to take into account political parties, opposition party and party in the government, as well as we have to take into account civil society and NGOs. If we don't think of it as a whole system, and if we think of it just in terms of a single legal piece, we will not achieve actually anything about accountability.
So when you talk about accountability, you're talking about a holistic accountability, you're talking about a multi-stakeholder endeavor, you're talking of strengthening institutions of accountability across the board, you're talking about forging partnerships, and the donor community should be willing to facilitate these partnerships.
Democratic accountability will be key for achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And this means that also donors should rethink how they do their work. They have to take more into account the national and local context. They have to renounce some of their management control logic and consider that sometimes the unexpected achievement of results is something that they call with their own rhetoric ownership, and they should accept it.